So this course is called Sales Leadership, Tracking, and Follow-Up. And this is something that I'm super, super excited about. This is a product of my last 7 years really in the industry. And for me, I've gone through a huge journey in regards to tracking sales opportunities, following up with customers, and it's something that I'm really excited to share. I think that last week's webinar went absolutely awesome, and it was great to build some momentum. But this is going to supercharge what we talked about last week, because essentially last week we talked about, building a digital sales pipeline. How do you do that? Well, when you're dealing with customers digitally, you have to have a way to keep track of them. Otherwise, they're going to slip through the cracks. And so if you started to put into place some of the things that we talked about in last week's webinar, this is going to take off right where that left off. So what I want to do, just to rehash for everybody that just jumped on, is I'd like everybody to leave yourselves off of mute. I'll go ahead and mute you if there's any background noise. But that way, if there's any questions or anything you want to talk about, you can just jump right in and not have to worry about finding the unmute button. The second thing is I'd like everybody to find the participants window, and you've got those icons there you can click to either raise a hand, check yes, check no. And what I'll do is I might ask a question and say, hey, if you want me to call on you to give a comment, go ahead and raise your hand or check the yes box. We'll do that to be able to keep this conversation natural. And the same thing, if you want to punch anything into the chat, I'll be looking at that as well, so we can jump into questions and dialogue that way. Because at the end of the day, listening to me for an hour and a half is not going to make a difference in your business. What's going to make a difference is going to be taking these principles and actually applying them. And the danger when we're in a situation like this, we're being inundated with trainings and webinars and things are just crazy for us. The danger is that we don't actually execute. And this system I'm going to be showing you today is a system that absolutely works. We have seen this used to grow our retail division by millions of dollars. And it's something that I know can work for you, but it has to be done. And so we're going to spend a lot of time talking about, once you have these ideas, what is it you have to do to actually build it? Because that's ultimately where you're going to move the needle. But before we jump in, I want to just ask you guys, let's just round table real quick. And I'd love to go around the horn and hear where you're from, where you're at right now, and where your business is. So if you want to, go ahead and raise your hand if you want to introduce yourself, and I'll go ahead and call on you guys right here. This is great practice for the rest of the webinar. Karen, let's start with you.
Karen Luther?
Mm-hmm.
Or Karen DeVerde? Go ahead, Karen DeVerde.
Hi, Tim. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi, good. I'm Karen DeVerde. I have Enchanted Fireside in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And we are very, very slow, pretty much doing everything just by phone right now and email.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I will tell you that the content in this is going to be perfect, because if you use this system, it will set any of your team members up to be essentially just as effective working from anywhere, whether they're in the showroom or not. So that's really good context. Let's jump to Brian. You want to introduce yourself, Brian?
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's Brian Richards. I'm with Canned Heat and also Monte Fireplaces. We're located in Iowa and in Vancouver, Toronto, and Amsterdam. So I have the team on here with me. We have Douglas, Anna, Brandon, and Ian. We're all getting into this webinar type of presentation, and I think this is just a great course. So happy to be here.
Cool, that's awesome. We appreciate you being here. Michael, let's go to you.
Hi, it's Michael Dorsey with Fireplace Safety Screen. I'm a manufacturer's rep, and I focus exclusively on one manufacturer, Quanix, who supplies the safety screens to the majority of the gas fireplace manufacturers for their certified barriers.
That's awesome. We appreciate you being here. Now, if you guys want to, now that you've raised your hands, if you click that button again, it'll unraise your hand. And that way we know when people want to talk. Yeah, perfect. Good job, guys. Okay, well, so let's go ahead and jump into this. So in this course today, there's going to be really three things that we're going after. And at the end of the day, this course is going to teach you, number one, why tracking and follow-up is the biggest missed opportunity in the hearth industry today. Like, bar none, it's the biggest missed opportunity. If a company comes to me and says, Tim, we're struggling, we need to grow our revenue, I don't tell them to advertise, I don't tell them to do marketing, I tell them to implement a tracking and follow-up system, because it will move the needle instantaneously for your company if it's not in place already. If it's not in place, if it is in place, there's other things you can do to move the needle. But with this, I mean, it's just something that is very low cost, and the returns are unbelievable. Number two, this course is going to teach you how to build a CRM spreadsheet for your team that's going to transform their productivity. So there might be some people on this call that pay for big, expensive CRM systems. And a CRM system stands for a customer relationship management system, or customer relationship management software. And I am not against that at all. I think that CRMs are amazing tools, but the truth is they're really expensive, and most businesses in our industry don't have them set up. So what I'm going to do is teach you to build a basic one for yourselves. And it's something that we found to be extremely effective. Number three, we're going to talk about how to manage your team with a weekly game plan. And this is one of those things where, for team members, a lot of the time when you start at a tracking and follow-up process, they get overwhelmed with so many customers. Where do I start? And there has to be a way to focus that energy. And so the weekly game plan is like the icing on the cake to this. It's going to be able to bring it all together and not only make your team more effective, actually give you a tangible and simple way to manage your sales team on a day in and day out basis. Now, one thing I'll say before we really get going is that my story is I've been in the industry for about 15 years now, and I spent the last few years managing multiple retail showrooms in the Pacific Northwest. We got up to about 5 at one point that I was managing. And what happened for me is that I realized that we had gaps in our system. And over the last 7 years, I've put different pieces in play with this follow-up system. But basically what you're going to get now is like 7 years worth of work. And my hope is that it's a time machine for you guys, that you can, learn from the failures and the successes that I've had over the last 7 years and start to put this into place tomorrow, because it absolutely can move the needle. So we got one more introduction here in the chat, and this is from Kim. And Kim doesn't have a mic, but she says that they're from the Tinderbox, and they're out of Catskill Mountains of New York State, and that they're extremely slow right now. And yeah, unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of that. And again, the goal of this course today is going to be to give you a pipeline system that can actually move the needle for your team, whether you're remote or whether you're in the office. And I would actually argue that this will start to set your business free from being enslaved to bad hires that maybe have a lot of experience, where you have a hard time training new people. It's also going to set you free to just do new things with your business you haven't thought of, because of the flexibility and the productivity that your team members have. So if tracking a system of follow-up is something that sounds good to you and your business needs, I want you to give me a green checkbox in the participants tab right here. And again, this is the way that we're going to be talking to each other throughout the webinar today. So what I want to do first is I want to introduce you to somebody that I know very well. And this is Tim Reed, average salesperson. And this is circa 2010. So, for me right now, I've been in the industry for about 15 years. This picture is almost basically 10 years ago to the day. And this is the first trade show that I ever went to. And at this point in time, I've been in the industry for almost 5 years. I've been an installer, and I was in a sales role. And for me, like, if you would have asked me, I thought that I was a really good salesperson. I'm going to give you some statistics right here, almost like a baseball card. So if you'd have asked me, the statistics would have been that I love fireplaces. I think I'm great with people, with products, with technical knowledge. I like to drink beer, have a good time, right? I think that's at the Napoleon booth at the trade show back in Salt Lake City. And I thought that, like, obviously I had stuff to learn, but I thought that I was a pretty decent salesperson. And I think if you would have asked my boss at the time, he would have agreed. And he would have said, yeah, Tim's our go-to guy. Like, he's memorized all the manuals. He knows every clearance. at the time, I was working for a company that had a number of salespeople, and I was leading the team. I'd answer all the questions on the floor. You know, if someone said, "Hey, what's the clearance of this stove to a back wall when you have double wall pipe?" I mean, I'd know it off the top of my head and be able to relay that information to the team. On top of that, I felt like anyway, I was pretty good with people. And I felt like I did a pretty good job of communicating with them and, you know, understanding what needs they had and how to solve it with a problem. And I think that the team would have agreed with me. The reason I tell you this though is that the last statistic is that 10 years ago, I didn't understand how much a lack of follow-up was costing me. And I would argue that this is probably the situation for your company and possibly you yourself, depending on where you are. And so what I found is that, you know, for me, at the time that I was in this role, I was not paid on performance. I was just paid a flat rate base pay. And what happened is, like, as I didn't make any more money. And so what was really tough with that was that I would sell as much as I could, but I wasn't incentivized to actually grow our company's business. And I mean, people on this call might be all over the spectrum, and that is totally okay wherever you're at comp-wise. But there was a direct correlation in my world between my productivity and the way that I was paid. And it wasn't that I was lazy or ill-willed or anything like that. It was that I just didn't know. I'd been taught that when someone comes in the showroom, you're supposed to write them up an order and try to sell to them. But I'd never been taught, once you have written up an order, you need to track it and you need to follow up with it. And it sounds like really simple, and it sounds, I mean, honestly, like silly. But the truth of the matter is that it actually made a big difference. And so what happened is, when I left that job, and about 7 years ago, I started with another company here in the Pacific Northwest, and they were a really big new construction player. And I got brought in to grow out a retail division for that company. And all of a sudden, I was in an empty showroom trying to grow this thing with basically no door swings. And I realized really quick that, like, I had to start following up on leads. I had to track my opportunities. And it was just a new world. And because my pay was contingent on how good the division did, I was incentivized to do it. And so I started to build some practices of follow-up that, you know, over the course of these last 7 years, have been able to become a sales system that's been extremely effective. And so, you know, this is just one of those things that I say this to introduce you to myself 10 years ago, because I think that there's a lot of people in our companies that are just like me. They know fireplaces, they're good with people when they're in front of them, but they don't understand how much lack of follow-up is costing them. And I would actually argue, even with me in this role, my boss didn't know. My boss had no idea how much lack of follow-up was costing us, because we didn't have a system. There was never conversations about, this is how you build a follow-up system. This is how often I expect you to follow up with your customers. The conversation was just sell more, and then somebody was getting angry about, well, why didn't you just call these customers back? There was no system that was put in place. So with that, we got a couple check boxes here. And so I want to call on a couple people here. First, I want to go to Kyle. And Kyle, I want to ask you, why is this something that's going to be effective for your team? Okay, Kyle might be turned off. Let's go to Michael.
Well, currently I use Salesforce.com, and it works, but I don't know that it's the best system, and I find that it's just, I don't know if it's the best system, and I'm just interested to learn what other people are using.
Yeah, cool. And what's Salesforce done for you? That's a great program.
Pardon me?
What has Salesforce done for you in helping you grow your sales?
It just allows me to catalog everybody that I interact with, that I want to follow up with, and just keep track, because prior to that, it would have just been paper files, and never works in this day and age, especially for somebody who travels a fair amount. You just need things more accessible, and in an online world where you don't have to worry about losing your files because they're saved remotely. All those things are just more practical.
Yeah, Absolutely. Douglas, let's go to you. So you check the box. Why is this something that you think is going to be good for your business right now?
Basically, what like Michael said is something that we have electronically stored instead of maybe written down.
Cool.
And, I remember years ago when I got into sales and someone said the sale doesn't begin until you've actually sold the product. And I didn't understand it at the time, and that meant follow up with the customers, see where they're at, see what they need, and what maybe there's something more you can do for them. Or in that industry, it was even get, additional leads.
Yeah, that's
Anything like
100% right. Was someone else going to say something? Okay. Yeah, that's 100% right. That the sale, I mean, it doesn't begin until the product's sold. And where this goes to next is that, most businesses really don't have a follow-up system at all. And I'll tell you a little story. So about a year and a half ago, I went out to visit one of the big manufacturers in our industry. And we were having dinner with some of their biggest accounts. And so these are dealers that do a high volume of products. And we're at dinner, and I'm sitting across from this business owner. And I'm just, curious about sales and process and stuff like that. And so I just asked him, I said, what's your guys' follow-up system on opportunities and leads? And he just kind of looked down at his food and looked kind of embarrassed. And he looks back up and says, we don't have one. Maybe they get called back one time. And that really hit me that, like, this is a successful dealer that's running a good business, but there's still, even for them, a ton of missed opportunity. And so as I started thinking about this, like, I realized that this is an issue. Like, a lot of the time in our industry, we think we have a lead problem, but we actually have a follow-up problem more than we have a lead problem. Leads come in and customers come in, but most businesses aren't equipped to follow up with them. And to piggyback on what Douglas was saying, back at that old job that I was at, 10 years ago, our follow-up system was this, is that customer would come in, and I'd do a really good job of asking them questions, and I'd write up an order. It was all by hand. So I'd write the order up by hand, ask if they wanted to place a deposit. And if the people said they're still thinking about it, they would leave. I would take my paper copy, put it into a folder that was in the corner of the office, and I'd forget about it. And I'll never forget, like, from time to time, the owner of the company would come down and get mad at the sales team and be like, why are you guys calling back your customers? And in my mind, 10 years ago, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, if they want to buy, they'll come back here. I'm not going to bug them. But that was it. So, like, the owner wanted us to follow up. There was never a conversation about, this is how you do it. This is how I expect it to be done. And there was none of that. It was just, anger and frustration. And for the sales team, again, we actually weren't a team of salespeople. We were a team of information givers, because we didn't know or understand the value of follow-up. And so what would happen is, this folder would get covered in dust, and it'd get, jackets and coats set on it, coffee spilled on it. And 6 months later, a customer would come into the showroom, and I would say, hey, how you guys doing? It's good to see you. And they would say, well, hey, we came in 6 months ago, and we're back to get a fireplace now. And I'd go, oh, perfect. What's your name? And I'd go back over to the folder. I'd pull all the jackets and coats off of it, lift it up, blow the dust off, and hey, there's your order. All right, perfect. Let's make a sale. That was our follow-up system. And unfortunately, that's where most businesses are. And so again, I'm not saying this to shame anybody, because there can be a very successful business built without a follow-up system, just by, doing good work and having tons of customers come through your door. But what you're going to find is that implementing a follow-up system will supercharge your efforts. It will make you more effective with less customers. You'll find salespeople that sold, pick a number, $500,000, that can go to $1 million. Single salesperson, just by tracking and following up with their customers. Now, to go one step further, not only do most businesses not have a follow-up system with their existing estimates, but most businesses don't even know what to do with leads when they come in. So I hear every year from manufacturers who their dealers tell them at certain points of the year, stop sending us leads. And guys, that is business suicide. Like, that is literally the stupidest thing that we could ever say. And I totally get that we're a seasonal business, and there's times where we all get slammed, but leads are the lifeline to our business. And like, we knew that we signed up for a seasonal business. I mean, sorry, like, that's the game that we're in. And when you're in a seasonal business and there's times where things get busy, you got to build systems and processes. And so, most companies don't know what to do with their leads. And at best, they call the customer back once, and at worst, they do nothing. And I think what's really difficult is that there are a lot of dealers who think they check the box by calling the customer back once. So a lead comes in, they get called back one time to see if they're interested in a fireplace. The dealer checks the box, moves on to the next thing. But that's actually not the way that it should work, right? I want you guys to type into the chat here, like, how many times do you think you need to follow up with a customer before you give up on that lead? I want you to type that into the chat, because this is actually like some really, really interesting data here. But a lot of businesses just think that they check the box by doing it one time, and that's not the way that it should work. So what I want to show you guys next is kind of the timeline of how this follow-up system came about. And there's really kind of 4 different stages to it, where stage 1 with this was me starting out in an empty showroom. And so, like I said, about 7 years ago, I was kind of dropped off. The showroom wasn't literally empty, but it was pretty close. And so I got brought in, and at the time, like, I had to pick the units on the floor. I had to try to build some systems and processes, and eventually get busy enough to hire team members and turn it into a division of the company. And so for me, coming from a business where we didn't follow up, and I just thought that sales came to you and that was the way that it worked, it was a reawakening when I'm in this empty showroom realizing I got to find a way to follow up with my customers. And so what happened is, eventually over time, I started developing what was called a quote log. I had a coworker show this to me. And basically it was a simple Excel spreadsheet where we track all of our opportunities, customer's name, the date, the phone number, the dollar value for the job. And I'd color code it on whether it was won or lost, or the job was still open. And that was something that really moved the needle for me, where, it wasn't as sophisticated as it could have and should have been, but at least now I had a way to start tracking every opportunity. And that worked really well for myself while I was an individual salesperson. But what happened is, over time, the showroom started getting busier and busier. I started having team members working underneath me, and my singular quote log system didn't work because it was in an Excel file. So I'd make a version of it for a team member, but I didn't have visibility of it. And they would sometimes fill it out, sometimes not. And if they were off work and a customer came in to ask a question, me or another team member couldn't get into their computer to see the notes on the job. And so we stalled out at that point, and we needed a different solution. I'm going to jump in real quick here to what people are saying. So the question was, how many times should you follow up with a lead before giving up on it? And Michael says 5 times to follow up. Joel says however many times it takes. And honestly, like, both of those answers are really good. And I would go back to the old direct marketing adage that says you follow up until the customer flies, buys, or dies. And I would do that even with a lead. And we'll get into how you build a process to do this. But if a customer becomes a lead, that means that at some point they were interested in your products. And if you call them to follow up once and hang up the phone, we're all busy. Like, you're probably not going to get a call back. You're just a random business that's giving them a phone call. But if you call 2, 3, 4 times, eventually the person's going to pick up the phone and they're going to tell you one of 2 things. They're either going to say, yes, thank you for calling, I'm interested in that product. Or they're going to say, oh, you know what, we're actually not that interested. And you respect whatever decision they make. But yeah, I think that you keep following up until you get an answer, because especially we're going to find out in the next 6 months how valuable a lead is, where for the last 8 years, it's been busier than we can handle. But in the next 6 months, leads don't come by every day. And so we got to keep calling that customer or emailing them until they give us an answer one way or the other. So yeah, good answers to those questions. So for me, going back to the story, I built this Excel sheet that was helpful for me. And I ran into a wall because I had team members working underneath me, and it no longer worked. So what we did is we created a team CRM spreadsheet, and we took the essentials of this Excel sheet that we used to track our jobs. We moved it into a Google Sheets document that was on the cloud. And this made it to where now we could view everybody's opportunities. We had different tabs for different salespeople. We'd set the permissions so that you could only access your tab. And now we had visibility of it to where I could see who's working on it and who's not, so I could start to manage and hold accountable that way. team members could help each other. And since everybody could see the opportunities that the rest of the team was working on, it honestly just helped us become a more well-oiled machine. And that worked really well for a while. But we ran into a roadblock with even that. The roadblock we ran into is that over time, you start to get so many opportunities in your CRM spreadsheet that it's more than you can handle. And for most retail team members, if you give them a list of 500 customers that are, they're on their CRM for the last year, and you say start following up, they're overwhelmed. And it's like, well, where do they start? And usually what happens is they just follow up with the most recent ones, and people just drop off. And so what we had to do is figure out a way to focus this and set team members up for success rather than being overwhelmed. Because when our brains get overwhelmed, it's like watching Netflix, right? When you turn on Netflix, you can watch anything that you want. And how often is it that you sit down in front of the TV, you turn on Netflix, and you're like, I don't know what to watch. Well, it's because you can watch anything, and it's actually too much decision. So what we need to do is focus that, seemingly unlimited list of customers into tangible bite-sized pieces that team members can go after. If this is resonating with you, I want you to give me a green checkbox, because this is the evolution that we went through, and it was a really big deal. So, like I said, this is a time machine that I want to give you to save you from this 7-year timeline of mine. But the reason I'm telling you this is that everything I'm talking about is very, very real life. This is not something that's just theory. Like, we've actually used this to grow our teams significantly. Okay, yeah, Douglas has given us a checkbox. Michael is as well. Where I want to move to next is I want to highlight one of my friends named Bradley Hartman. And I went to Bradley's Sales Fundamentals Workshop a little over about a year ago. And his Sales Fundamentals Workshop is held in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm actually helping him teach it this September. But Bradley is an unbelievable sales trainer for people that are in the B2B space. If you do any selling to builders or to dealers, you have to be consuming his content. He's got a podcast that's called the Behind Your Back Podcast, and it will change the way that you do business. It's centered around the lumber and building materials industry, but it's about how do I connect with builders? How do I connect with purchasers? How do I connect with dealers? It's unbelievable. But I was at his workshop, and he was talking about focusing your sales teams. And he gave an example of an NFL team. And Bradley actually was a former college quarterback. He actually has a great story about how he helped recruit Tony Romo to Eastern Illinois years ago. And what happened with Bradley is he talks about how when you're in the NFL, your playbook is 1,000 plays. And when you go to play the Chargers on Sunday, you can't access 1,000 plays in your mind quick enough. So what does every coach do? They boil those plays down into a play call sheet. You see NFL coaches, right? They've got one in front of their face the whole time. Well, what that is they're taking their 1,000 plays and they're breaking them down on which ones do we want to use against the Chargers this week. If it's the first quarter and we're in the red zone, what's our group of plays that we could pull from? If it's the fourth quarter and we're down by 5 at midfield, what are the plays that we could call from? It's a way to simplify and focus what they do. And when Bradley said this, it blew my mind. And he actually gave out an example of how to do a retail, or not a retail, because he's selling builder to builder, but he talked about how to build a weekly play call sheet. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, dude, this is amazing. And we got to tweak it a little bit for our retail purposes. But I just asked him, I said, can I steal this from you? Because it's unbelievable. And he said, yes. So I'm putting his slide up here to give credit where credit's due. But this is something that has really helped us, and I know can help your teams as well. So we're going to jump into the first part of how to actually build a CRM spreadsheet. But what I want to do is I want you to raise your hand if there's any questions or any comments in the meantime that you want to talk about leading into this. I know that I'm going really, really hard on why we have to build a follow-up process. And I think the truth is that if we're honestly looking at our businesses, I think that we all can tighten the screws on this. So if anybody has a comment, I'd love to call on you right now. I'm just going to check this real quick here. Joel, let's call on you on how do you see this play out with your dealers?
Where the heck did Joel go?
Oh,
I was on mute. I muted myself.
That's all right.
Sorry.
Yeah, how do you see this
Um,
idea of follow-up playing out with your dealers where they're at?
That's actually one of our top priorities right now is working with our distributors and our dealers in keeping the flow of conversation going with their customers. Now's a great time to follow up on. We send them leads all the time, so it's a great time for them to follow up on the leads and just to keep the conversation going. You can do video. I think you talked about in another seminar, just you can do a video chat with them and a video tour of the product as well. So, anything that keeps the conversation going with the customer is good.
Do you find that most of your dealers have a follow-up system in place that's effective?
Some are better than others.
Yeah.
Large variety. Some are,
Yeah.
like you said earlier, very successful without having a formal process, and others have a tremendous process and follow up all the time. So it's a wide range.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Okay, well, I want to jump into showing you guys how to build a CRM spreadsheet. And you're going to look at this and think like, Tim, this is really simple. And the answer is yes, it is. And that's why it works. So again, if you use a big, expensive, complex CRM software system, I'm not telling you to change it. What you might find is there's some things in here that you can add to your system to tweak it. But for most companies that are not using a CRM, this will be an absolute game changer. So what you're looking at right now is a sample of the CRM that I used to run my teams. It's a really simple system. We've got the salesperson's name on it. We've got their year-to-date close rate. We've got a list of how many jobs are in the CRM. We've got their last 30-day close rate. We break down jobs by category, and I'll kind of go through in a second what those are. But it's color-coded. So if an opportunity is red all the way across, it means that we lost the job. If it's green all the way across, it means that we won the job. And if it's that kind of like pinkish color across, it means that the job has been put on hold by the customer. And I want to break down exactly what categories we track in this, but this literally will change the way that your team starts to think about sales. And so what I'd recommend tracking in your CRM spreadsheet is the date, the customer name, the phone number, email, the unit, the type. So like the unit would be like the specific model number and the manufacturer, where the type would be gas insert, wood stove, pellet fireplace, whatever category it is. And that's going to give you some metrics on your close rates with different product groups. We're going to want to track the dollar value of the job. We want to track the job level, and we'll spend time on this, but you see on this screen here, the jobs are categorized as either an A, B, C, or D. And it is absolutely critical that you track the level of job this is, because not all opportunities are created equal. A jobs are high profit, low time, and low risk. D jobs are low profit, high time, and high risk. And there's a spectrum in there. And as I talk to salespeople across the country and ask them about their systems and the way that they have a follow-up process, some of the best salespeople, they do a good job of tracking their opportunities and following up with everybody, but they don't weight their follow-up attack based on how good the opportunity is. We'll spend some time on this in a little bit, but if you don't track this metric, it's very, very important, and it'll be a game changer for you. The next thing is we track the pipeline stage. So every customer is part of a pipeline, and we want to figure out where in the journey they're at, right? If the customer just comes into the store and hasn't even received an estimate, they're at the very, very top of the sales pipeline. But over time, as they get an estimate, eventually you get a professional out to their house, they start to work their way down through the sales funnel, and you want to keep track of where every customer is in each stage of the pipeline. You want to track the number of follow-ups that have been made, the last date of contact, what the next step is in the process, and then any miscellaneous notes. And sometimes what I hear is, people say, well, sounds like a lot of paperwork. And honestly, if you do this, it takes a team member literally like 20 seconds per customer to enter this. It does not take a long time, but it's a step that they're not used to. This step, though, will empower them to sell more and more and more. And to give you an example, there's a team member that I brought on about 4 years ago to do sales when I was managing retail stores about 4 years ago. Basically zero industry experience, and this kid is young, 22 years old. So year one in sales, about 350,000. Year 2, we start to put this CRM metric in place, 750,000. Year 3, 850,000, and year 4, over $1 million. So by year 4, this kid's 26 years old, selling over $1 million a year by himself. And the reason why is that he has a system like this to help him stay on top of his customers and organize his sales. We've seen this system take C and D level players and give them, I mean, what I would say are pretty good results, like over $600,000 a year in sales from people that I guarantee you wouldn't hire. And so this is something I mentioned earlier, that this can actually start to set you free from bad hires, because just the organization of it, it starts to make your team members better, and you're not as reliant on people that have bad habits. So I tell you that story just because tracking this stuff is really important, and I'm going to give you a system to manage it as well so that you can grow this with your team, and it's actually a blessing for them, not a hindrance. I want you to raise your hand if you have any questions about that so far. I'm going to keep going, and I'll stop in a little bit and get to the hands that are raised. So what we wanted to track first, I want to dive deep on job level, because like I said, there are a lot of people who don't know what their best opportunities are. And the truth of the matter is that jobs are not created equal. And so to give you an example, like we grade our jobs on an A, B, C, D, F system. And if it's an F, we don't bid it. If it's a D, really, we probably shouldn't bid it, but it's like the lowest common denominator of a job that we really don't want, but we probably need to offer that service. That's a D. You go up the list to an A, and like these are amazing jobs that are, you know, high profit, time, low risk, like I said before. And it's really important to give your team direction for this, because if you don't give them direction, salespeople just want to sell. And you'll find that aggressive salespeople sometimes sell bad opportunities because they're so hungry to get a sale. And one of the best things that I've found is slowing team members down and getting them to think about, what are the best opportunities that we have in front of us? What's our opportunity cost if we take on this bad job? And so you want to build an actual rubric that your team can look at to determine the level of a job. And I'm just going to go through these jobs real quick. So an A-level job, and this is not the hard and fast rubric, but this is an example of an A-level job. These jobs are low time, low risk, and high profit. We want as many of them as possible. So, you know, in my world here in the Pacific Northwest, a gas-to-gas insert, right? If you've got gas inside the fireplace, it's made of brick, the house probably isn't going to burn down. It's simple to install, high profit, low time, low risk. Load me up with those. And I would actually sacrifice other jobs to get more of these A-level gas insert jobs. In fact, there's companies I know of that have created a fast lane on their schedule, which is a brilliant idea, where they take 1 to 2 days a week of their install schedule, and it is only for A-level jobs. Amazing. I mean, yeah, if you want a C or a D-level job, like you can get it, but it's take longer to install. Okay, B-level jobs. These jobs are still really good, but they tend to be higher time, higher risk, or slightly more difficult. So they're still good, but there's something about it that it's not quite an A-level job. And so the way that we looked at this, again, was if a gas insert with gas in the fireplace is an A-level job, a freestanding wood stove might be a B-level job, where it's still a good job and we want it. But I mean, the stove could be 800 pounds. We're cutting holes in a roof and in an attic to get the pipe through. So we do it, and it's a good job. But, you know, gun to my head, I'd rather have a gas-to-gas insert for the sake of simplicity and time. Okay. C-level jobs are okay, but not preferred. And this could be due to a number of reasons. It could be due to complexity of the job, the time it's going to take, the profit of the opportunity, or customer difficulty. And this is really, really important to think about, because an A-level job could become C-level based on a customer's mindset. And so I'm not going to tell you what your rubric should be, but I would recommend building one. And as I didn't mention this earlier, but I've even got like a template CRM spreadsheet with a rubric built for job levels that I'm happy to send anybody if you want to email me afterwards. But this way, a team member can look at their opportunity, they can grade it, and determine where that sits in the priority levels of their follow-up. I want you guys to raise your hand if that makes sense. And if you guys have any questions about tracking that stuff, about job levels or anything like that, we'll keep moving here while I look for hands. The next thing that you want to track is going to be pipeline stages. And so in addition to tracking how good the opportunity is, you want to track where it is in the sales funnel. And I would recommend keeping a very simple sales pipeline. And I'll tell kind of a funny story here. So for me, like, I mean, I didn't know what a sales pipeline was until like 7 years ago. It didn't occur to me that customers go through different stages of the journey. And there was a conversation I was having a number of months back. I'm not going to say the company, but with a high-level person in a high-level company. And I'm talking to them about how they're missing opportunities, and they need to start tracking where their customers are at in the sales funnel so they can start working this through at all angles. And this person looked at me and goes, "Did you invent this?" And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "This sales funnel, did you invent this?" And I was like, "What? No, like this is like sales 101. So there's people at like high levels of big companies that still don't understand what a sales funnel is. And doing this is going to give you power and a ton of credibility over your competition. And this is going to lay a groundwork for managing your team. So the 4 stages of the sales funnel that I would recommend tracking are this. Stage 1, the very top of the funnel, is a customer who has received a proposal. Stage 2 is going to be a customer that has now scheduled an in-home visit. Stage 3 is that they've completed the in-home visit. And stage 4, the job is either won, lost, put on hold, or it's still open. 4 simple stages. So tracking this, it makes it really, really effective because you'll kind of know the maturity level of each of your opportunities. So when a customer comes into the store, they're at the very top of the funnel, right? I mean, they're actually like stage 0 of the funnel where they don't even have a proposal yet. When you've been out to a customer's house and finalized the dollar amount for the job, they're way down low, like they are about to buy. But if we're being honest, and I love just someone to be brave and shout it out here, do you find that more time gets spent with the people at the top of the funnel or at the bottom of the funnel? What do you find? Seriously, guys, like what do you find? Do team members tend to spend more time with, you know, the customers who are coming into the showroom, or do they spend more time trying to work through the people at the bottom of the funnel? All right, we got Michael raising his hand. Michael, what do you find?
Well, I mean, I don't work in a retail environment, but I guess I've been around long enough that most of the time is spent with people who just can't make a decision on if they're going to buy from you, and so it just drags on and drags on and drags on. So.
Yeah, that's the way it is for a lot of companies. And what I found, and I mean, and this is from, you know, years and years of working retail, is that so much focus is put on people that come in the store, they've never been in before, they're starting from scratch, and like Michael said, they're asking all kinds of questions. They're trying to figure out, you know, what's the difference between these 2 fireplaces, and what's this front versus this front. And that's not bad. You need to work that part of the funnel. But what happens with most companies is they ignore all the customers that they've already been out to their house. They've already completed the estimate, and the customer is like right on the cusp of buying. That gets ignored because it's not urgent. The people walking in the showroom, it's urgent. You have to deal with it right away. But for customers, when they're, you know, after you've already been to their house and you're not there in front of them right away, it's not urgent. There's no one making you do it. And so why it's really important to think about things in pipeline stages is you want to have a full sales pipeline at all the different maturity levels of the process. You want to have a whole bunch of customers at stage 1 that have received a proposal but have not yet scheduled a visit. You also want to have a whole bunch of customers that are lower in the funnel where you've either scheduled that visit or you've completed it, because that means that you're able to start working this thing through like a system over and over and over again. And I know that this sounds overly simple, but I'm telling you that tracking this and teaching it to your sales team to think this way, it will change the way that they operate with customers. Because when a customer is at stage 1 of the pipeline and a team member is going to follow up with them, what's the call to action? It's not to place a deposit, because that's stage 4. This customer's at stage 1. We're trying to move them to stage 2. So the call is, hey, Mrs. Smith, you know, I know that you came into the showroom, you received your proposal. I'd love to get an in-home visit scheduled so that way we can confirm the number and just double check that everything's going to be safe for the installation. That's a much different phone call to make than, hey, I've been thinking about it and didn't know if you wanted to move ahead with your job. That's jumping straight to the finish line. Breaking it down into stages really helps the process. So the next thing that we're going to track on this is going to be how many follow-ups have been made, what the last date of contact was, and any notes on the job. And I have a little quote here that says salespeople get overwhelmed and afraid to follow up when they don't know where things were left off with their customer. It's like if you don't have notes about what the last conversation entailed, if you don't have a note about when the last follow-up date was, you know, salespeople get afraid and they kind of think, oh, well, they're going to think I'm bugging them and I don't even know where the job's at. Versus if they've got notes saying, you know, John and Susie came into the showroom on Monday. They weren't ready for an in-home visit yet because they were going on vacation. They asked if we would call them the week of May 1st when they get back. Well, that really helps you when May 1st comes along to call, you know, John and Susie and say, hey, I hope you guys had an amazing vacation. I remember how we were talking before you left that you wanted to schedule an in-home visit after you got back. Now that you're back in town, is there a good day for us to come out? That is a much more powerful phone call than if the team member had no notes about it. Even if they just had a CRM system where there weren't notes they were tracking, the team member might see the opportunity from a few weeks ago, but they don't remember when they were supposed to call or what was going on, and they're bumbling all over themselves versus the credibility of having notes. So, you know, for Michael, who uses Salesforce, this is like Sales 101. You keep notes of every single customer. But what I found in our industry is that there's actually not a lot of companies that do this. And frankly, like, I didn't do this for a long time. And the reason I'm sharing it is that once we started tracking this stuff, it made a huge difference. And it gave us tools to coach and to harness the energy and focus of our sales teams. So we want to track that stuff. In addition to that, what we want to do is we want to create filters to focus. So over time, this CRM spreadsheet is going to get really big where you're going to have, you know, 300, 400, 500 opportunities on this. And like I mentioned, a team member's like, well, where do I even start? So we want to create filters, and Google Sheets is very similar to Excel. And so we can create filters that focus the opportunities that are being shown to a salesperson. And I'm going to recommend 6 filters. Now, I accidentally wrote filter 3 twice on this slide. So we have 2 filter 3s, but there's 6 different things you want to track. You can set this up to where a team member with the click of a button can look at their last 30 days. It's called the 30-day snapshot. And this is really great for you as a leader and for them to see just how their last 30 days been. How many opportunities do they have? What's their close rate? Where are the customers in the pipeline? Are these A-level, B-level, C-level jobs? 30-day snapshot. You want to create a filter where at the click of a button, the customer, the team member is going to see all of their A and B-level opportunities in the last 30 days. That makes sense, right? So in the last month, we're not looking at all of our opportunities. We're looking at our best opportunities. We want to create a filter to look at all of our jobs at stage 1 of the process. And you remember stage 1, going back to it, is that the customer has received an estimate, but they haven't scheduled an in-home visit yet. That should be stage 1 of the process. And you want to be able to view all those customers at one time. You want to build a filter to show all of your stage 1 jobs again in the last 30 days. You want to build a filter to show all of your stage 3 jobs. Stage 3 being customers who you've been out to the house, you've completed the in-home visit, the estimate is finalized, but they haven't placed a deposit yet. You want to be able to track all those. Same thing, you want to track all of your stage 3 jobs in the last 30 days. So these 6 simple filters will make it to where your team members, at the click of a button, can start to change the way that they work. When we first started this, we'd have team members that on Mondays, they'd work on all their stage 1 jobs in the last 30 days. On Wednesdays, maybe they'd pull open all of their A and B level opportunities in the last 30 days. Maybe at the end of the week, they'd engage stage 3 customers from 6 months back. This just gave some organization and focus to what we were doing. And I want to ask, you guys are welcome to interrupt. Does this make sense? Filtering and focusing your opportunities like this for your team members. Does this seem like something that would be helpful for your team to use? Kyle, you're raising your hand.
So I think it's very helpful, and Tim, you showed this to me, a little while back, and I've implemented something similar. I don't think it's as robust as yours, to be honest. And I think my hiccup And a lot of people's hiccup in this scenario will be actually implementing, how do you write the filter? How do you, when I started on, creating the rows, it was how do you space the rows, appropriately so that you can actually see what's going on. And I think there's a lot of, tech side of just getting used to Google Sheets or Excel or whatever you use. That can be the hiccup for a lot of people in these, and it certainly was for me. But I do find that it's a very helpful tool.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And what I want you guys to do is I want you to give me a green checkbox if what Kyle said resonates with you. Give me a green checkbox if that resonates, because that is one of the most common, roadblocks that we see. And, that's one of the things here where like there's no guilt, there's no shame at all. We just got to ask for help. And so yeah, we're seeing some checkboxes here. So what I would say is for anybody that feels intimidated by this, it's really simple to build, and I'd be happy to show it to you. So you can follow up with me offline. If you send me an email, I'll have my email address up at the end. I'll send you a template CRM spreadsheet that a lot of this will be already built out for you. But like Kyle said, implementing this is the most difficult thing. And on the back end of this course, we're going to talk about how to implement it. But we're going to keep moving here because I want to get into the rest of this. And as I tell you this, like, I know that it can seem like theory. It can be like, there's no way our business could run this way. Our team would never go for it. And I'm just going to say that, like, it will work. And this should be the lifeblood of your team, because this sets them up to start to be able to work remote, right? When a customer emails in, when a customer calls in, the team member can log that customer. They can log that opportunity and start to track it and follow up on it. But this should be the lifeblood of every team member that they work on a day-to-day basis. Because it's on the cloud, you as the manager or the leader are going to be able to observe their behavior and help coach them and guide them. Now, if you have a company that's just 2 people and there's no manager, you're the manager, the salesperson, and everything, amazing. Build this for yourself and hold yourself accountable with it. Because I found that building this for me, it was like I'd created my own digital assistant that was able to keep track of my thoughts and just the opportunities that I had. So I want to move on to part 2, which is going to be, once we have this CRM in place, we have to be able to focus our team with a weekly game plan. And I'm going to reference this weekly game plan that I mentioned earlier. That same analogy of the NFL coach applies, because the roadblock that you're going to run into with that CRM spreadsheet over time is that you're going to get to a point where your list gets so big, or your team's list gets so big, that they lose track. There's too many opportunities. Even if you break it down by the different filters of the different stages, there's too many. They're overwhelmed. There's not a system of execution. And that's where the weekly game plan comes into play. Here's what the weekly game plan is going to do. So my friend Tim Rethlake has a great quote, and he says that a room full of salespeople is like a room full of monkeys. Nearly every act is random. And unfortunately, that's kind of the truth sometimes. And so what the game plan is going to do is it's going to take all of that raw energy that very often operates in chaos and randomness, and it's going to focus it in a way that your team has never been focused before. And it will hugely increase their productivity. So because salespeople tend to act randomly without discipline and many times without thought or purpose, I know that was true for me. This will give them guidelines. And for me, what I found is, when people meet me, they think I'm really organized. And that's actually a learned behavior. Where left to my own devices, I am not an organized person. This quote is me, I operate in total chaos if I don't have a model built for me. This is a model that will focus the energy of your sales teams. And at the end of the day, focus is the key to sales productivity. So what your weekly game plan is going to do is it's going to set you up to do a few things. And number one, this weekly game plan will draw lines on the court so that your team is all playing the same game. Going back to that job I had 10 years ago, we had no lines on the court. We knew that we were supposed to sell. We didn't know how to do it. We didn't know what was expected of us. There was all kinds of frustration and burnout on both, my end, the sales team's end, and the business owner's end, because there were no lines drawn on the court. And so this is a big opportunity for you as a leader to actually give expectations to your team. Once you draw those lines, like, it's amazing how team members start to play the game. So after you draw the lines on the court with your weekly game plan, You got to teach them how to play the game, because this is going to be foreign, and this will take time to implement. But for you as a leader, it doesn't stop with you developing the CRM and developing the game plan. You have to be working and coaching with your team on a week in, week out basis so that they can learn how to play this game. What this will also do is be able to help you evaluate performance. And I would argue that team members honestly want to be held accountable, especially if you got millennials working for you. They are desperate for accountability. They want to know what's expected of them. They want to know if they're winning. They want to know if they're losing. And if they are losing, they want to know how they can get better. If you have a team member that you find doesn't want to learn how to play the game and doesn't like their performance evaluated, it's a strong indication that they're not the right team member, at least in this role. Because if someone is a competent salesperson and has a desire to get better and make more money and serve more customers, they will play the game and they will be okay being evaluated so that they can learn. If you do this right, the very last piece of this is that you'll be able to inspire your team to keep going. So what I found is that having a weekly game plan, it opens up a door of coaching and mentorship with my teams, where I can start to, engage them. As I evaluate their performance, I can start to talk about, hey, these are amazing results. Like, these are results that we've never seen before. Keep going. What can I do to remove roadblocks from you? If we're looking around saying, hey, it looks like your performance isn't as strong here, and we've got other team members that have been able to execute with a little bit better results, let's talk about, what are they doing that we could maybe put in front of you as well that could help you. Maybe we could have you ride along with them or sit by them at their desk for a little bit. This opens up the door to focusing and inspiring your teams, because at the end of the day, every person that works for your company wants to be on a winning team. And this starts to show them if they're winning or if they're losing. The CRM does as well, but this takes the raw energy of the CRM and it focuses it into a laser beam that can be executed on. So this is what my weekly game plan looks like. And I'm opening it up right here. It's basically the same thing that you see on the screen right there. It's a really, really simple worksheet. And what we do on the back side of it is, we put all this inspirational like pictures and sales slogans and things like that. But really, at the end of the day, this is a very simple worksheet to track and follow up with your customers. Here's what's going to be on it. I guess I'll go back here and show it to you real quick. We've got the team member's name. We've got what week it is, right? It's the week of April 20th. We are going to track jobs that are in the stage of a written proposal that we want to move into a site visit. We have a spot to track jobs that have had a site visit completed that we want to get a deposit on. We have a spot to track thank yous with our customers. We've got a space for target accounts. These are people that we don't do business with yet that we want to win business, like landscapers, architects, builders, target accounts. And then down at the bottom, we've got the amount of in-home visits that we're doing for the week. So Karen's got a comment that she loves the Jerry Jones rule. And I'll get there in just one second because this is an amazing rule. But this focus will change the way that your team works. I want to go into this in detail. So when you give your team a weekly game plan, they need to find 10 jobs that they want to move from stage 1 to stage 2 of the pipeline. Remember, stage 1 of the pipeline is the customers received an estimate. Stage 2 is that they've scheduled an in-home visit. So you got to go back through your CRM and find 10 customers that are at stage 1 that you want to move to stage 2 this week. The next category of 10 jobs is to find 10 customers that have completed the in-home visit. Remember, that's stage 3 of the sales pipeline that you want to collect a deposit from. So up here across the top, this is working your sales pipeline, right? You're starting with customers that are at the proposal that you're wanting to move into an in-home visit. And then you're taking customers that are at the in-home visit, trying to move them into a deposit. Down at the bottom, you've got this category for in-home visits this week. And I want to go back to the slide real quick. So that's the area in the green down in the bottom left-hand corner. And there's 10 jobs. And if you look at the categories are the name of the customer, the product, and AFTM. And this is the Jerry Jones rule. So if you guys watch Hard Knocks, a number of years ago, they had one on the Dallas Cowboys. And they get behind the scenes in the locker room and you get an amazing perspective on the teams. And there's a point where Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, is in front of the locker room. He's talking to him about life. And he says, you know, in his Jerry Jones voice, he says, well, people think that I'm good at selling. They think I'm a natural salesperson. And in my life, I've found 5 rules of being a great salesperson. Rule number 1, always ask for the money. And I forgot the other 4. It's a great clip, but Jerry brings up a great point that at the end of the day, you have to ask for the money. And the reason that we track the in-home visits this week, and we've got that box there that says AT or AFTM, what we want to do when we go out for an in-home visit is we have to finalize the order and ask the customer in their house if they want to get on the schedule. We talked about this a little bit last week, but if you don't do that, you are ruining an opportunity of being in the customer's house. All the momentum is with you. They invited you out. They want you to be right, and you owe it to them to finalize the order and ask for the money. So what you're tracking on a week-to-week basis is, these are all the customers' houses that either I'm going out to or my estimator is going out to. And if it's me going out, when I leave that customer's house, can I check the box that I asked for the money? If it's an estimator, I need to call them after they leave the customer's house and ask them, did the customer get their final proposal? Did you ask if they want to get on the schedule? It doesn't even matter if the answer is yes or no. You have to ask for the money at the house. And if they say no, then it goes back into your follow-up system as a stage 3 level job that you're going to follow up on to try to move the needle on later. I want you guys, if you can, give me a checkbox if that system makes sense of working through your sales pipeline, and when you're out at the customer's house, checking the box on, did I ask for the money? Okay, Douglas, Karen, we got some check boxes here that this is resonating. This is a really big deal, guys, and it will move the needle for you. So, okay, the next things that we want to track is we want 5 past customers that we're going to reach out to and say thank you to, whether it's via email, text message, phone call, like however you want to do it. But you want to go back through your CRM and look at past jobs and find 5 customers you just want to call and check in on and show gratitude to. Maybe you send them a $5 Starbucks card, or you give them a phone call and just check in. This is an amazing way to win referral work. Next is going to be target accounts. So this is going to be targeting 10 accounts. Every salesperson should have 10 accounts that they want to win. And maybe it's a builder that doesn't do work with you right now. It's an architect, it's a designer, it's a landscaper. And what you want to list out is one action you will take this week to move the ball down the field. So again, you're not jumping with every single one of these. So I'm going to ask if I can, get the spec of their fireplaces. Maybe what you're going to do this week is I'm going to visit 3 of their job sites and see what they're putting in now. Maybe it's I'm going to spend an hour looking over their website to learn about their company. So target accounts are going to be people that will do repeat business with you. So again, remodelers, landscapers, architects, builders, whatever it is. But you want your team members to know who they are, and every single week, think about what's one thing I'm going to do to move the ball down the field. Lastly is going to be the weekly big 3. And you can see that right up here at the very top right-hand side. The weekly big 3 are just, what are the 3 biggest things you need to get done this week? And for me, the way I manage my teams, I didn't care if this had to do with work or personal or whatever. Getting a team member to think this way, to planning their week out, will fundamentally change, it will change their lives, not only what they do at work. Most people operate in chaos. And there's this saying that says, everybody ends up somewhere, but only a few people get there on purpose. And this is a life skill that will honestly change the course of your team members' lives. Them having to think through, what do I want to go after this week? How am I going to do it? What are the most important 3 things? If I don't get anything done this week, what are my most important 3 things? It will fundamentally change the way that they work, and it'll change the way that they live. Karen had a comment here that I want to share, asking if I'd be willing to share this document, and I absolutely would. So please send me an email, and I'll make sure that you guys get a hold of this. I'm more than happy to share this with you, and I can share it in an Excel file, so that way you can modify it however you want. Okay. So here's the thing. If you can use a weekly game plan like this, and let's say that it's a 4-week month. Well, in that 1 month, your team member will have followed up with 40 customers to move the needle from an estimate into an in-home visit. They will have followed up with 40 customers who'd completed an in-home visit and asked for the money. They will have followed up with 20 past customers to call them and say thank you to. They will have moved the needle with, so you have the 10 target accounts, and they will have done 4 different things each week to move the ball down the field with those accounts, and they will have knocked out 12 critical items that they need to do in their weekly big 3. I mean, if that doesn't sound like a productive week, like, I don't know what is. So everybody that's got a checkbox up, take it down. And if this is something that like is more effective than most of your team members are, I want you to put it back up, because this is something that we've just seen be a game changer. And what we started to do is we started to keep a public scoreboard of tracking the opportunities of who's following up with the most customers. And we found, like, I mean, we had team members following up with like over 150 customers a month. It was crazy how this system changed what we did. And sometimes the pushback is, well, Tim, you know, they're not going to follow up with 40 customers to move from an estimate into an in-home visit, because, you know, they might follow up with the same customer a couple weeks in a row. So it's actually not 40. And I would say, okay, fine. They're going to follow up with 10 customers 4 times this month. Amazing. You know, the truth of the matter is that sometimes we get scared of the follow-up process, and we can't. We have to think about follow-up. You know, I give the example all the time. It's like my dentist. Whenever my dentist needs me to schedule an appointment or wants me to schedule an appointment, they call me. And I always don't recognize the number, and I'm busy, so I screen the call. Well, they leave a voicemail. At the end of the day, I'll check the voicemail and think, oh yeah, the dentist is trying to get a hold of me. And I don't call them back because I'm busy. A couple days later, I get another call. I don't recognize the number, so I screen the call, and same thing. Well, they don't give up. They end up calling me 5, 6, 7 times. And sometimes it can take a week and a half, and it can take 7 phone calls for them to reach me. But eventually I recognize the phone number. And when I pick up that phone, I don't say, what are you doing calling me? Stop bugging me. I pick up the phone and I say, oh my gosh, thank you for following up with me. I know I need to get in there. Let's go ahead and get that scheduled. Your customers are the same way. And if you're ever bugging your customers and they tell you that, stop calling them. But until they say that, just like Joel mentioned earlier, until they say that, keep following up with them again and again and again, because your customers are busy, and our products, like, when they leave our showroom, they've forgotten about our products. They're on to the next thing. So this is going to help give you a way to make sure that your team members are unbelievably effective in what they do. Now, we're going to get into part 3, which is going to be the measurement and the accountability of this. But I want to open this up really quick. We got some check marks here. We've got Brian, we've got Douglas, we've got Liz. Does anybody with a check mark want to just speak up to how would this change the way that either you or your team operates on a week-to-week basis? Anybody want to speak up here? I know it's scary. How would this change the way that your team operates on a week-to-week basis? So if I'm understanding right, this would make no difference in the way that your team operates.
Tim, I
Kyle.
can speak up a little bit here.
Yeah.
I have implemented, like I said earlier, something like this with one of my sales reps. And I've found, for nothing else, you know, other than that they're, I think, much more organized than the rest of the team. I think that, you know, because they can see everything in one spot, and they have, you know, some kind of follow-up, I think that it gives me some insight into what they're doing. So I don't have to say, you know, I don't have to micromanage the follow-up, I feel like, as much. I have a way to say, okay, this is a goal for the week, and I can check in at the end, and it gives them some more freedom and gives them some opportunity to, you know, develop the follow-up system as they think is most appropriate.
You hit the nail on the head 100%, that this is a tool to manage your sales team and to grow them. Absolutely. And the way that I look at this, again, we're drawing lines on the basketball court. We're not telling them how to play the game. So for team members, you know, we're going to say, yeah, you need to use the CRM to track your opportunities. This way you have an understanding of where jobs are at in your sales funnel. Now with the weekly game plan, I'm assuming that if they're a salesperson, they get paid more as they sell more. So if that's the case, they want to make more money. If we organize our opportunities for the week, I think that that's going to yield more productive results. Now, once you have your game plan, you can, however you want to do it. If you want to text customers, email them, call them, if you want to do it in the morning, at night, like, it's up to you. But this provides a framework. And just like Kyle's saying, this allows you to be able to manage and coach your team members to be better. And if you have a salesperson that doesn't want to do this, or that fights the resistance of it, it's an indication that they may not be the right person, because sales is not what happens on the showroom floor. That's like 20% of what sales is. 80% of sales is what happens when you're on the computer sending emails or making phone calls, working through your weekly game plan and the spreadsheet. That's the not glorious part of sales, but that is what will move the needle for your team member in your company. And to give you an example of this, like, we had, I recently left my job about 3 weeks ago to kind of jump full time into this new venture of coaching and training and software development. And about probably 6 months ago, we had a new hire that came to our company, and they were hired in September. So right in the beginning of the busy season. This team member didn't know what a gas insert was, didn't know what a wood stove was. They had family in the industry, but they themselves had zero experience. And this is a high character person. I mean, just a great worker. And they were just a joy to have at our company. What we found is, by using the CRM sheet and by using the weekly play call, we were able to keep them focused. So what we did for this team member is, because we rated jobs on an A, B, C, D level, when they first came on board, we said, you're only allowed to touch A-level jobs, because there's low risk, there's low time, there's high profit. Since you're new coming on board, this is going to set you and the company up for success. We gave them the CRM to work with. We went through basic training, and really, the initial training, it took about 6 to 8 weeks before they're on the sales floor. So this team member, not joking, in the month of December, sold $60,000 worth of product. I mean, this is someone that in September didn't know what a gas insert was. In December, they sold $60,000 worth of product, and in January, they sold $80,000 worth themselves. And the reason why was that they had a system in place to help them do it. And even though there can be resistance with this, I do not want to discount that. What we found is, once a team member starts to use this and see the results from it, they live and breathe it. And this new team member has said, like, I can't believe that I have this resource. I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have my weekly game plan. If I didn't have my CRM, I'd be sunk. So the last part of this workshop is going to be the measurement and the accountability of this. So now that we built the CRM, we've got this weekly game plan, how do we make it to where this sticks, where there's not resistance, and we can actually be effective with it? And I want to lay out a few things for you. So there's 4 different ways to do this. Number 1, if you're going to put this in play, it starts the first day of the week. The first day of the week, team members need to be given 1 hour before the store opens to complete and turn in their weekly game plan. They need to complete it, and they need to turn it in, and you need to give them time to do it. Now, going back to this game plan here, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities on this, and I'm not joking. This will take a solid hour to fill out, a solid hour, maybe an hour and a half the first time. So if you just give this to a team member, say you build the CRM, you update all their jobs from the last year. And you say, okay, perfect, I want you to make a weekly game plan. Good luck, right? You're drawing lines on the court, but you're not teaching them how to play the game. It'd be like handing my 4-year-old a basketball and saying, okay, I want you to start working on jump shots. It doesn't work that way. So what you want to do the first day of the week is, you got to set the time aside. Number 1, what I would recommend for your first 4 to 5 months, you are there with the team every week to help them do this. I would recommend buying donuts, buy coffee, and if your store opens at 10, get there at 8:45. If your store opens at 9, get there at 7:45 with your team. And spend an hour helping your team create their game plan, and they have to turn it into you to show that it's been completed. I'm sorry, they have to turn it in to show that it's been filled out, not completed. Okay? So throughout the week, the team should be working on this. They should be crossing it off. I mean, for me, I love it when I see like highlighter and spilled coffee and scribbles all over this thing. Because on the last day of the week, the team has to turn in their completed game plan. So first day of the week, they're filling it out, and you're doing that with them. Last day of the week, they're turning it in. And the reason I say last day of the week is that some people work Saturdays, some don't. Same thing for first day of the week. Some team members have Mondays off. So it's whatever the team member's first day and last day of the week is, this has to get turned in. What you want to do then is meet weekly. Now, over time, you can stretch this to meeting twice a month, but I'd recommend, especially at first, meet weekly. And in these weekly meetings, you actually want to go over people's game plans. Who's being effective? Who's not? What's the scoreboard of who's selling the most? How are we finding time and best practices to get this completed? Having a weekly meeting like that with your team is so important for building camaraderie, helping hold them accountable, and also inspire them. And I'd recommend actually building a scoreboard around this. And this isn't a webinar about scoreboards. We can talk about this next week. But you want to build a scoreboard. And I would recommend that the scoreboard shows their sales for the month. It shows how many customers they followed up with. It shows if they've done their game plan for the week. I mean, there's different metrics you can put on it. But in these weekly meetings, it's really important to review the scoreboard and make sure that team members are being effective. We found it's a great time to help each other, because if you put the scoreboard up and one team member's got unbelievable results and no one else does, well, that inspires the other team members to be better. But also it helps them, if you have a good camaraderie on your team, for them to say, hey, Susan's doing really well. Like, what's she doing? And in the meeting, you can say, hey, Susan, you're following up with tons of customers, making all these sales. How are you finding time to do this? And it's a dedicated, focused time to share best practices and get better. So you got to build this with them on the first day of the week, have them turn it in the last day of the week, and then have a weekly meeting to talk about this, to set them up for success. The purpose of this is not to browbeat them, it's to set them up to win. Lastly, there needs to be a monthly one-on-one coaching meeting with any team members. Now, if your company's 2 people, I get it. You're going to start out small, but this is a system that scales. This is a system that can work for someone with 5 stores. This is a system that can work for a business with 2 employees. But you want to have a monthly one-on-one coaching meeting where, maybe you bring to the meeting all of their game plans for the last month and just talk through it. Hey, what's working? What's not? I noticed that you're having a hard time on these type of jobs. Is there any training I can give you? Are there any roadblocks in your way that I can help you with? Investing in monthly coaching like this wins you credibility with your team members. And most companies don't do it because it's not urgent. No one's making you, meet with your team members one-on-one. But this is one of the most effective ways to grow your sales team and to get them bought into a system like this that's ultimately there to help them. So if you can do those 4 things, this is going to go really well. First day of the week, fill it out. Last day of the week, turn it in. Meet weekly with your team. And then monthly one-on-one coaching. And if you say, I don't have time to do this, you don't have time to be a sales manager. Like, period. You don't, because this is what being a sales manager is. It's managing your team, giving them tools to win, and setting them up to succeed. And what we found in doing this, we've had team member after team member that has had, I would say very quick success because they're part of a winning culture. They know what the score is, and they're excited to play the game. We found just tremendous effectiveness in this. Does anybody have any questions on putting it into play before we keep moving here? Go ahead and raise your hand if you do, and I can call on you. If not, we will keep moving. Okay. Well, as we finish out here, I appreciate you guys listening to this. And I know that this is a lot, and this is something that is very foreign for a lot of companies. And I don't want to discount that. But I want to throw out a few questions, and if your mic is unmuted, I'm going to go ahead and call on you. So we got to be brave here. But the different questions I want you to think about is, what's this made you think about that you hadn't before? Number 2 is going to be, how is this going to help your business during the COVID crisis? So let's think about who we're unmuted, who's unmuted here. Let's go to Michael. What's this made you think about, or how could this help a business during the COVID crisis?
I mean, it's an ideal system. It's just, the biggest thing, as you said towards the end, is you need to have somebody who is acting as a sales manager who will actually implement it, because otherwise it's just a frustration and a waste of time. But it's perfect. It's just not a model that, most businesses use. And I'm not just saying Fireplace. I used to be in the window and door industry and had a kind of lumber yards as customers. Same exact thing. It's just a different way of selling that is new to a lot of people. But it's perfect.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. For anybody else that's unmuted, how could this help during the COVID crisis? Let's go to Joel again. Joel, how could this help businesses during the COVID crisis?
I'll cut you off, Joel.
Talk about fire too, but what's that? Karen, you said something?
Oh, you're good now.
Okay. I was going to actually say that, having a plan is really the key, is whether you're having a plan for your week or having a plan for calling back your leads. Is without a plan, there's no way to get to the end where you need to. So, and also being able to measure it is how you laid it out, to have to be able to measure what step you're on and what's the next step, and have you completed that. That all get you to the end. Without having a plan, you're not going to get to the final result, which is getting the sale. But as far as all of this during the COVID crisis, this keeps you focused, keeps your people focused on the same game plan as why we're all kind of either sitting at home or taking turns going into your operation. If we have a plan to get through this, we'll all be successful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the making a plan is so critical. I mean, for me, I try to do it every Sunday night. I make a plan for the week, and it takes an hour and a half. I'm a big digital guy, but with my plan, I physically have a book, and I write down my calendar for the week, what my appointments are. I write down the tasks that I need to do on each day. I just think through and prioritize things in my week, and it doesn't always go according to plan. But Eisenhower's famous for saying, plans mean nothing, but planning is everything. And I'll tell you, for me, like, even if my week doesn't go according to plan, the weeks that I spend Sunday night thinking through and planning out my week, that sets my week up for success. If I sleep in on Monday and I roll out of bed and just start doing, I crash and burn. And your salespeople are no different than that. So yeah, this rhythm of planning, it will change the way that they work. And honestly, with this as well, what you're going to find is during the COVID crisis, if a showroom is shut down, so what? A team member, if they got their CRM, if they got their weekly game plan, they can be just as effective, if not more effective, from home, because they're not getting interrupted by people coming in and by emails and customers. They can be extremely effective working in a more remote capacity. And this actually opens the doors to, like, I've had team members that they start using this system and they get to be pretty effective at it. And so over time, what we do is we change their comp to a full commission model where they're paid 100% on commission. With that, they get freedom. They can come to the showroom when they want. They can stay home when they want. They can visit job sites when they want, because they've shown they got a book of business. They know how to work this thing. And it sets them and the company up for huge success because they're paid on pure commission. It's a high risk, but an extremely high reward. So they can make amazing money. But because they're paid on full commission, they get the freedom with it. And this is a system that allows them to be productive. What I want to ask here as we round out is going to be, of everything we talked about here, and I'm gonna call on somebody else unless someone new wants to speak up. What's going to be the easiest part of this to implement? Of what we talked about, what's the easiest part? Go ahead and speak up. Otherwise, I'll just call on somebody.
I can go back to what I was saying earlier. Is I have Excel sheets and sticky notes everywhere in my office, and I start out with a plan for the year, for the month, for the week, for the day, and as you get through it, you just start crossing things off. So just having a basic plan, start out with a long-term plan and bring it right down to the day. That makes everything easy.
Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Starting with a plan, right? What do they say? Failing to plan is planning to fail. That's absolutely right. I want to ask then, with this, what's going to be the most intimidating part to do, or the hardest part to do with your team? I'd like a retailer to answer this. Of everything we talked about, what's going to be the hardest thing to implement with your team?
I would say for a lot of people, uprooting what seems to be the normal system, and kind of, maybe it's not starting fresh for everyone, but for a lot of people, it will be changing the way that you go about things. And, that's a very daunting task. it's something that I'm working on currently, and it's scary. And there's a lot of pushback because people know how to do it a certain way, but if it's planned correctly, I think there's a lot of reward to be had.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think it's one of those things where Chris Hogan says that nobody likes change, but everybody likes improvement. And we got to find a way as leaders to show our team members how this can improve them. And where I would start, again, like you got to do this with grace. So you don't throw the whole kitchen sink at them. You probably start with just the CRM spreadsheet. And what you do is you work with each team member to load all their opportunities from maybe the last 6 months into the spreadsheet, all their past quotes, and you help them with that. Then what you do is you bring out the weekly game plan as they start to get familiar with the way that CRM spreadsheet works, and you get out the weekly game plan. And literally, I mean, I would spend the first 4 to 5 months every Monday morning or whatever the first day of the week is for each team member. I would spend it with them, buy them coffee, buy them donuts, make it fun, and say, I'm paying you an extra hour to do this. Like literally, it would be the best hour you could ever pay a team member for to plan their week, because they will get so much more done having planned their week than they ever would have without it. But you got to come alongside them. And what you can do is, I've had some people say, well, this is just a bunch of extra paperwork. Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, it takes you 20 seconds per customer to fill out a line on the CRM. And like, how many new leads do you get a day? I mean, I'd be shocked if you got more than 4 leads in a day. So, okay, an extra 60 seconds of your day. I'm sorry. Like, I think that everyone's got an extra 60 seconds that they spent talking to someone about, the football game last week. On the play call sheet, that's a solid hour. So that is an investment of time, but it gives focus and productivity in a way they hadn't had before. So you got to walk down that path gracefully with your team. But what I found for me is I did say that, guys, we're going to be going down this path together and I will help you with it. But this weekly plan is a required part of your job. And if you are choosing not to do it, then this is a required part of your job that you're saying you don't want to do. And that will indicate that this is not the right job for you, because this is a required part of it. And it never got to the point where we had to fire anybody or anything like that. But we did have to have some hard conversations, especially with salespeople that have been around a little bit longer. The biggest resistance that we found is with salespeople that have been doing it for 20 years and they think they know how it works. But what we found is that we could take a person with no industry experience within a year and a half, get them up to the same level as that 20-year person because they had a system in place. So you got to have just real conversations about this with your team. You got to handle it gracefully. But this is what sales is, the tracking and the follow-up. And this will make it to where your customers are happier, that you're calling and following up with them. They're not always having to call you and talk to you about it. It's something that it's just a win-win for everybody. And I know it's difficult. I know that there's resistance, but this is worth sticking to because this scales with your company, especially during the COVID crisis. People are going to be super effective anywhere that they are. So as we end this, I want to give you 3 steps to execute. And if you've got a pen and paper, I'd like you to write this down. Step 1 is I want you to set aside 2 hours next week to build your CRM spreadsheet. Everybody's got 2 hours. 2 hours next week to build your CRM spreadsheet. You can either build it from scratch, or if you want to email me, I'll send you my template and you can use that as a starting out point. Number 2 is you need to meet with your team, explain the weekly game plan, and fill it out together. So you got to explain why. Hey, this is why we're going to do this. I've looked at your sales numbers and we want to pay you more money. We can do that by getting you more sales. But in order to do that, we got to get some basic organizational habits here. Meet with your team, explain the why of the weekly game plan, and fill it out together. And number 3 is going to be set up team meetings and one-on-one coaching meetings in your calendar for the next 3 months. Don't do it for 1 month or you'll stop it in month 2. But book your next 3 months worth of meetings right now with your team members. Get it in your calendar, get it in their calendar, and get this ball rolling. It takes time to build a habit. And if you can get into this rhythm of meetings, like I try to book my standing meetings on a quarterly basis. So that way they're all on the calendar. I know when they're coming. They don't surprise me. And you can do the same thing. So I know that what we talked about today was a lot, but these are steps that can absolutely grow your company long-term. I mean, I've seen the results of it firsthand. And as we've talked, I know that, we've kind of had a shy group, and that's okay. Last week's webinar, all about building the digital sales pipeline, it was a lot of information. It was very different than the way that many companies do things. Today's kind of foreign as well, because we're talking about sales practices and fine tuning the process and managing your team in a way that not a lot of companies do. And it can be intimidating and it can be, scary. Next week's webinar, I'm coming with no agenda. And what we're literally going to do is we're going to change the viewing style of this, where we're going to be looking at each other on the screen like the Brady Bunch. And we're going to spend an hour and a half putting these systems in place for your companies. So next week, you got to bring a pen and paper. If you have a sales manager or somebody else that needs to be on this call, get them there too. And this is going to be a live workshop. And so we're going to have everybody unmuted. We're all going to be looking at each other on the screen, and we're going to build this together. How do we build this digital sales system? What do we do in this scenario where I'm worried about buy-in from this person? Okay, I've got my CRM open. What do I do here? It's going to be super, super practical. And while it's been a lot of me in these first 2 webinars, next week's going to be a lot of you. And I think that's where the real money is going to be as we grow this thing together. So with all that, I want to thank you guys for being here. I sincerely appreciate it. I'm thankful to National Chimney for sponsoring this. It's extremely generous. And I'm bummed that I couldn't be out there in person right now, but I think that what we're doing in light of the crisis is really special, and that it's the businesses who can implement things like this, that even during the crisis, but especially on the backside of this, they're going to come out, swinging and ready to do some serious business. So with that, I want to say thank you, and I'm going to stick around for a couple minutes if any of you guys want to chat.